Let me show you the steps on how to create an Oracle table. And I'm going to use Apex to do so. So what I'm going to do is from Apex, I'm going to go into SQL Workshop. And from here, I can do a SQL command or in our case, a SQL script. Remember, the script is like a savable program where the commands are like a one-off command line sort of interface, such as like MS-DOS, if you remember that. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a script that's going to build an Oracle table. Now we're going to keep it pretty simple. So from here, we get to see the scripts that are existing. You see I have one, or we get to create a new one. In our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new one, but let me just make my display a little smaller here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new script. So what I get to do is in the left-hand side, right where you see that blinking cursor, I supply my script name. Now usually in Oracle, scripts are they're prefaced by SC. So what I did is I created on I clicked on create, and I'm going to put in the script name. Now it's going to be a little small, but you could probably make this a little larger in your browser. So I'm going to call my script SC department table. So let me make this a little bit larger so you can see it on the overhead better. There we go. That's a lot better. So now what I get to do is I get to put in line by line what I want this script to do. So in Oracle and in most database languages, the end of a command is prefaced, or pardon me, has a suffix of a semicolon. So the first command here on line 1 is dropping the table called REH department. Those are my initials, REH. And then on line 2, I'm going to create the table, REH department. Again, REH are my initials. So let me put in a few tables. I'll put in department ID, which is a number. I'll put in department name, which is going to be a variable character or varchar, 50. It could be up to 50 characters long. Varchar 2, by the way, just means that it's that any spaces are truncated. All that means for you is it could be 50 characters long, and if you don't use all 50, that's fine. And let me put in the department date, and I'll just use a data type as date. So presumably we could just say department date is the date that this department was active or created. So here's a simple script that drops a table and creates a table. So line 1, drop table, RH department, again suffixed by the semicolon. And this is actually the second command that's creating a table. Now remember, it's only one command from line 2 to line 6 because all of this could presumably be on one line if we wanted it to. We wouldn't be able to read it though. And I'm using just 3 simple data types. I'm saying department ID can be a number. I'm saying department name is variable character or varchar 2. You could look up the difference between varchar and varchar 2 if you like. It can be up to 50 characters long. And the department date, presumably the date that the department was created or whatever, it's our table, is a date. Simple data types, they're going to get more complicated. And on line 6, we're suffixing the line to saying, this is the end of the command. So we basically have 2 database commands here. So now what I can do is click on run to run the script. So when I click on run, I'm going to get prompted like one more time. Are you sure you want to run it? Kind of a pain in the butt. Of course I want to run it. So let me scroll down and click on run now to run the database script. And when I click it, the script will run and it'll tell me what errors I have. Now remember, what we're doing is we're basically compiling a program here. So what this is telling us is we have 2 statements that are processed, right? One was successful, as you see in the middle, and one has errors in it. So if you look up on the upper left-hand side or in the middle, you get to see the commands that were trying to be compiled. So this is a compile error. Now this is actually a warning because it's basically what we're doing is we're saying drop the table REH department. Well, it doesn't exist yet. We haven't created it. So that's expected for line 1. Line 2 looks good. Table created. So I bet you if we run this again, it'll run just fine, or it'll compile just fine, because now we have that table that we can drop. Remember line 1 there, we had the error just because that table didn't exist. So let me run the script again, and let's see how we fare. We'll give it a second. Let me scroll down. Are you sure you want to run? Yes, I'm sure I want to run. I am positive. So I click on Run Now, and then I get to see here that 2 statements were processed, and it looks like both were successful. So in this simple video, I showed you how to go and build a simple script that drops a database table and creates a database table. Now, obviously, there's going to be more to this story, but this should get you started in just the steps without any fluff, just to create a table, compile the program, and then look to see if there's errors. And in this case, there's none. So now we have a table. The next step now would be just to use this table, to use SQL to insert data, update, delete, and what have you. As you probably know, a SQL insert statement is a line of code to take a single value and insert that into a table, or basically take in one row and insert it into the table. Now on the screen here, I have an example of 3 inserts that inserts into a table called REH department. REH is my initials, in case you're curious. One thing I want to point out is the syntax of this insert. What we're going to do in this short video is I'm going to show you different syntaxes for the SQL insert you can use to put data in your table. Now the syntax you see on the screen here is the most simple, where we just simply say insert into, and we put in the table name, and then we put in the values, and then we have a single value for each of the values that are in the table. And I'm going to comment this out, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some new code on line 4, 5, and 6. By the way, you could use the double hyphens to comment your code out. So you know the syntax of the insert statement I just stated to you, where we're inserting we're inserting a record or a column into the table for each value. So like in here we got REH department would have, for example, REH department has 3 columns, and we're putting in, column 1 equals 3, column 2 equals something else, and column 3 here equals the date. Now we also have a solution here in line number 5 and 6, where if you want to just specify the names of the columns, and you don't have, for example, all of the values, you can just specify the names. But look at the error that we get here. We have an error in here, not enough values. So let's see why. If you look at the script here, what I have for line 6 is I'm saying insert shipping, and then insert the department date into the RH department table. Now, I only had 2 columns specified, so that's why I got that error message that the number of values is incorrect. Let me show you what null means. What I could do is I could put null in for the first value. What null means is generally I don't know, or I don't want to supply it right now. We use it in SQL insert statements or in any other SQL statements in like this case, where we just might not want to supply for whatever reason the first column, which is the department number. So I'm going to put null there instead of the number, which means I just don't know it right now. I'm going to click on run now, and then you should see that the SQL statement, the insert, is successful. Good. So null just basically means I don't know what it is, but I need to supply the value, so here it is. We can also use a different syntax. If we wanted to, we can specify only the names of the columns that are going to contain values. If you notice in the syntax we use so far, we just say insert into, the table values, and then the values that we're going to insert into the column. So if there's 3 columns, we need to supply 3 values. But what if we don't want to insert into each one of the columns? Well, we can do that in the syntax I'm showing you now. What we can do is we can specify the columns that we're going to be inserting values into in the table, and then the column values. So here I'm going to put in, just for grins, I'm going to put in the 3 columns for REH department, and I cheated and snuck and I looked these up, so I make sure that my columns are exactly the same names. So I have insert in the RH department, department ID, department name, department date. And then for the sake of getting a good example, I'm just going to put in those three values. So also I'm going to put in a comment here. What we're doing here is we can specify the column name. We can do this if you don't want to, or you don't know the values of each of the column names. For example, RH department could have 1,000 column names, and you don't need necessarily have values for each of them, so you can just specify which ones you want to insert into. So this should work just fine. If I click on run, it should successfully insert a record or insert that row into my table, and it looks like it's successful. It works just fine. So let me show you the real power of this. And let me just explain to you that I'm giving you different syntaxes just because there's different scenarios that you might use them in. I'm not saying one's better than the next. I'm just saying that there's more than one way to skin a cat here. So, like, for example, if I wanted to insert into the RH department table, but didn't want to put a null, and maybe I only had, 2 of the 3 values or 1 of the 3 or something, what I can do is I can modify that syntax for line 9 just to supply the values that I have. And again, I'm making up these scenarios just to get a good use case to use them. I'm not saying you should use one over another. I'm just giving you different scenarios that you can consider when you're writing your insert. So anyway, so let me take line number 9 and copy it to line 12 just to show you what it, just to kind of spare you me typing this in. And for line 12, let's just say, for example, I might not, for example, maybe I don't know the name if I'm inserting into, and I'll supply it later, but I just don't know. You could use the syntax because I could have here after the insert into, I could specify the columns. So I'm going to insert into RH department, and I'm going to provide values for the department ID and the department date. Notice there's no null, there's no anything. I'm just saying I don't know what other columns I'm going to insert into, but I do have the value for the department ID and the department date. And let me run this, and I should get 2 successful insert statements because I didn't comment the previous one out. So that seems to work fine. So let me go back and show you, I can show you here, that I'm just inserting the values for the department ID and the department date. Now, the insert statement is a fairly easy SQL statement to understand, but it requires some practice and a little bit of research too. What you should be doing is, in addition to this, is you should be researching other syntaxes and other examples for the insert statement. Please don't use my example as the be-all and end-all. It should just really be the springboard of your own research in the insert. Google's your friend. You can just do Google insert statement syntax, and you can get some more code examples. So thank you for watching this video, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.